I know how all my high school teachers felt. What's that in front? It's funny.
We don't have a very good system.
I use my fitness instructor.
All right, God bless everyone. We'll stand and say, O Heavenly King, before we begin here. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit, amen. O Heavenly King, the Comforter, the Spirit of truth, Lord, everywhere present and fellest all things, treasury of blessings and giver of life, come and abide in us and cleanse us of every impurity and save our souls, O good one. Amen. God bless and keep you all. And I want to thank Matishka Krista, or Diakonisa Krista, with Deacon Gregory, I don't know, there he is over there, whom I have met numerous times over the years, but actually I think my wife knows Deacon Gregory a lot, pretty well, but thank God it is good to have them here after some delay, and I'll let her take over here. Please show her your utmost respect. Why are the lights on? I'll turn the light. I'll fiddle with the lights while we start. And God bless. Without further ado, Montesca Krista, take us away.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, Father John, and to the parish of St. John's for having me. I'm very excited to be here with you all tonight. I did make some handouts for you all. They were over by the food, and if you didn't get one, my husband, Deacon Greg, has some and some pens. So that is if you would like to take some notes today. But welcome to my lecture, Mother of Life, which is coming straight from the Troparia that we will sing on the Feast of Dormition on August 15th. And tonight we will be talking about nourishing both body and soul during the Dormition fast. So tonight I'll give you a brief introduction on who I am. We will review some Orthodox fasting basics so we can make sure we're all on the same page about what it means to observe the fasts of the Orthodox Church. We'll do a little meal planning activity, so you will leave here today with some concrete meal ideas that you can be making for the next 2 weeks. And then we'll review what the elements are of a nourishing fast, both nourishing for our body and nutritionally, and nourishing for our soul spiritually as well. And I'll leave you with some resources that you can take home with if you want to learn more and read more. So I'm Diakonisa Krista. I'm a wife-anarian, so my husband is a third-year seminarian at St. Tikhon's, Father John's alma mater. That's us there at the monastery of St. Tikhon's. We have 1 year left, and Lord willing, Deacon Gregory will be ordained a priest and will serve in Oastgate Parish somewhere in New York or New Jersey. That's our diocese. But I am originally from Pittsburgh. I'm a Pittsburgher, so I'm coming here. Yay! Yeah, so coming back here to speak with you all tonight is really like a homecoming. My home parish growing up was Holy Cross Greek Orthodox Church in Mount Lebanon. I see a lot of you here tonight, so thank you for coming. And then by trade, I'm a registered dietitian, so I have worked for the past 7 years in a clinical setting, offering medical nutrition therapy to a wide variety of clients and patients. And I also have a private practice I started a few years ago, where I lead with the Orthodox faith, and I'm mainly looking to help Orthodox Christians fast and feast well. So I can also give you some resources about my private practice there. So as I said, we'll review just what the basic guidelines are for the Orthodox fast. So general guidelines of foods to abstain from: first, meat, so that's kind of the first one to go. Then the next level would be dairy and eggs. Next, fish with the backbones. That means our things like shrimp are okay for the fast. And lastly, oils and alcohol. We have some asterisks up there because the Feast of the Transfiguration, which we celebrate on August 6th, this year falling on a Sunday. Fish is permitted. And then the Dormition fast is actually most similar to Lent, where we have a very strict fast during the weekdays, and on the weekends it's relaxed with the allowance of oils and alcohol. So that's if you're following the fast in its fullness, but fasting is not a one-size-fits-all practice. So it may not be appropriate for everybody to follow the fast to its fullness, and it's a really great opportunity to speak with your parish priest or your spiritual father about what those fasting guidelines could look like for you in your situation and your personal life circumstance. Now this quote up here is very wordy, but it's very good. It's very chock full of a really important point about the spirit of fasting. So this is coming from the Lenten Triodian, and I'll read it out loud in case it's a little small for you to see. At all times, it is essential to bear in mind that you are not under the law, but under grace, and that the letter kills, but the spirit gives life. The rules of fasting, while they need to be taken seriously, are not to be interpreted with dour and pedantic legalism. For the kingdom of God is not food and drink, but righteousness and peace and joy in the Holy Spirit. So it's not all about following the fast perfectly and following all the rules. It's not fasting itself that is the goal here, but the fruits of our fast. That's what we're after. That's the goal. So those are the general guidelines. Now, when are we fasting? Well, the Orthodox Christians, we fast throughout the entire year. In fact, we fast about half of the days in the entire year. So we're fasting Wednesdays and Fridays throughout the year. Wednesdays in remembrance of Christ's betrayal, and Fridays in remembrance of his crucifixion. In addition, we have 4 major fasting periods throughout the year. We of course have Lent, the most important 40 days plus Holy Week, which is our preparation period for Pascha. We have just entered today into the Dormition fast, a preparation period for the Dormition or falling asleep of the Mother of God. We have the Nativity fast, a preparation period for Nativity, and the Apostles' fast in the summer, the preparation period for the feast of Saints Peter and Paul. Now, within these descriptions of the fasting periods, what do they all have in common? What word do all these descriptions have in common? What was it?
Preparation.
Preparation, yes. So that gives us our why. So why are we fasting? Father John, next slide. Thank you. So there's lots of benefits to fasting, lots of reasons why we fast. I have selected a few that I feel are particularly relevant to fasting during the Dormition fast. So St. John of Kronstadt, in a sermon on the Dormition, says that fasting helps us to prepare our souls to be the dwelling place of the Lord. And the Theotokos was truly the dwelling place of the Lord. She carried him in his womb. She contained the uncontainable in her womb. So this is what we're after when we're fasting, is to prepare ourselves to be the dwelling place of the Lord, just like the Virgin Mary. Father Alexander Smemen says that we fast to emulate Mary. She is not the great exception, but she is the great example. She is the best saint, if I may say that. She is our best example. And by fasting, we take a little closer of a step closer to being like her. St. Simeon of Thessalonica writes that we should fast and praise her, emulating her life, urging her thereby to pray for us. So this fasting period is also an opportunity to ask for her intercessions and to strengthen our personal relationship with Christ's mother. And lastly, we fast to be with Christ. If being a Christian means being with Christ, no one did this better than the Theotokos. She's the only one to be with Christ through his entire life, from his birth to him taking his first steps, to his life and ministry, his death, his resurrection, and his ascension. So essentially, when we fast, we're being like the Theotokos. Fasting turns us away from ourselves and toward God, helps us to become like her, an obedient servant of God who heard his word and kept it better than anyone else ever has or ever could. So now that we know why we're fasting, let's get into a little bit of the how. So I want you all to start out. If you have a handout there, there's some blank spaces, some blank lines up there. I want you to just write down 4 to 5 fast-friendly meals or snacks that you typically make. So remember back to February and March and Lent, write down a couple meals. It doesn't have to be fancy. If that meal is PB&J, write it down. If that meal is what we had tonight, write it down. If that meal is plain pasta, write it down. We will come together a little bit later and talk about how to tweak those. Our starting point today will be those 4 to 5 examples of things that you already do for the fast. So I will give you 4 minutes. So go ahead and do that. If you need help and you need to talk to your neighbor, you can do that. If you need to talk with your spouse, do that. You can talk with each other. Thank you. Does anyone else still need a handout? Good job. So next, what I would like you to do is look at your meals and circle any meals that you would consider quick. So quick could mean different things for different people, but I like to say 30 minutes or less, maybe 45 minutes or less, depending on your typical dinner routine. Okay, next, I would like you to put a check mark next to any meals that everyone in your household likes, or most people like.
You can exclude Tommy, I think.
No, he's a good eater.
We got some giggles, that means that's a good one to consider. All right, and lastly, I would like you to put a star next to any meals that are balanced. Now, what do I mean by balanced? Father John, next, what do I mean by balance? So, I like to just think of balance in terms of food groups, right? We don't eat grams of this and grams of protein and grams of carbs. We eat food. So the four major fasting food groups, we have our proteins coming from plants, so our plant proteins, our fruits and our veggies, our grains, and our dietary fats. Now when we fast, it is our proteins and our fats that are mostly affected by what we are omitting during the fast. And I will say too that there is some overlap between our proteins and fats as well. But we get our proteins from plants, from foods like beans and lentils, chickpeas, black beans, all of those things. Nuts and nut butters like peanut butter or almond butter. Seeds and seed butters, so think pumpkin seeds, sunflower seeds, tahini as a seed butter. Edamame, which are soybeans and other soy-based foods like soy milk, tofu, tempeh, peas, veggie burgers, and there are others. There are proteins in other foods as well, but those are some of our richest sources of plant proteins. Fruits and veggies, any way you get in the fruits and veggies count. So they don't have to be fresh, they can be canned, they can be frozen, they can be dried. Get them in any way you can. Our grains, so that's everything from pasta and breads to crackers and pretzels to oatmeal and cereal, popcorn, ancient grains like farro or quinoa or bulgur. Those all count as grains. And then our dietary fats. We have our olive oil and other oils, if you're including those. Again, nuts and nut butters, seeds and seed butters. Avocados are a particularly fatty fruit that has some healthy fats there. Dairy, yogurt, and cheese, if you're including those. Coconut milk. And I always like to put the dark chocolate on there too, as a nice source of dietary fat. So go ahead and put a star next to any of your meals that have all four food groups, or if it has any crossovers, proteins, or fats, I count that as balanced too. So like if it has peanut butter, I'm going to count that as gold, for example. Yes, peanut butter is the go-to. Yeah. Okay, so if you have some meals that are missing a check mark or circle or star, that's okay. We'll come back at the end and we'll all share and use each other's brains to figure out how to supplement and tweak. But now that we've talked about how these elements, quick, balanced, and likable in the family, how they can be very, very physically nourishing, I want to talk about how these can also be very spiritually nourishing as well. So when we talk about quick meals, these are meals that are simple, right? They're simple, they're straightforward, they don't take a lot of prep, they're not fancy, they don't have 35 ingredients, right? They're very simple and straightforward, maybe a little plain, maybe a little boring. But when we go for those quick meals and those simple meals, we're being like another Mary. And I'm talking about Mary of Mary and Martha, the sisters of Lazarus. So Martha was anxious and troubled about many things. You can, picture Martha being troubled about, making sure everything was perfect for the meal and gathering all the ingredients and doing the dishes and making sure everything was okay. Where Mary was sitting at Christ's feet. And in Luke 10, when we read this story, it says that Mary has chosen the good portion. She has the one thing needful. She has chosen the one thing needful. And this is actually the gospel reading for the feast of the Dormition of the Theotokos and many of the feasts of the Theotokos, because we want to be like that other Mary. So by choosing those quick and simple meals during the fast, it helps us to spend less time in the kitchen and more time sitting at the feet of Jesus, more time in church, more time in prayer, and more time tending to the needs of others. Now, why do we want meals that everyone likes? Well, first of all, makes it a little easier. On us, it makes mealtime a little easier. But it also invites an enjoyable family meal experience when we can all gather around the table and enjoy the same foods together. There's actually some good research in my field, the field of dietetics. They study family meals, and they've seen that families who have meals together around the table do better in several ways. They do better nutritionally, socially, their kids do better academically in school. So there's lots to support, in the research field, a lot to support those family meals. But also from the perspective of the church and as Orthodox Christians, every time we eat is an opportunity to commune with God, to commune with the divine. And during our fasting seasons in particular, we can really try to emulate that by inviting Christ, and I would say inviting Christ and his mother to the table with us. So can we think of any ideas of ways to do that? How might we invite Christ and his mother to the dinner table with us? What are some things that we can do? You can just shout them out. Pray, yes, so pray before the meal, when? Pray before and after. Okay, I like it. What else can we do?
You can invite
icons where you eat.
Right, so say that, Micah.
Icons where you eat.
Yeah, set out an icon, that very visual representation.
Oh, I was just going to say you can invite a guest.
Yes, I love that. Showing hospitality, inviting a guest. What else? There's really no right or wrong answers. I mean, I have answers. That's sort of like the answer key, but there's more than that. Any other ideas?
Sorry.
Go ahead.
All righty.
Yeah. So the first two actually might seem like a given, but it's very important. Actually clearing a space, getting rid of any distractions, and actually sitting down at a table. Right? So clearing the space, having it be an enjoyable space to eat. Maybe you set out a tablecloth, and then you put the icon there. Maybe you light a candle if you want to feel particularly fancy and particularly sacred. Open with a prayer. You could read some scripture or read the life of the saint. Close with prayer, and there are many more. Yes, Father John.
I want to share something from my childhood that I particularly cherish. In my family, whenever it was kind of a more festive occasion, we were having a more formal meal, we'd always not only would set an extra space for Christ symbolically, or the random stranger who might show up, but also our tablecloth always matched whatever liturgical color was on the altar, so it was like a church, an altar away from the altar, which makes you think about church a little more as you're eating. And I'm a priest now, so clearly something worked. I'm not sure that's it, but
Yes, those are two very lovely ideas. So if you have any blue tablecloths at home,
Yes.
make sure to set those out for dinner. All right, and then lastly, balanced meals. So why do I say balanced meals are important? Well, I'm a dietitian and I tell everybody to eat their veggies, so of course they're important. But anytime we're removing a whole food group or two food groups from our eating pattern, it is especially important to make sure you're getting foods from a variety of the other food groups, to make sure your diet is nutritionally adequate and you get a variety of nutrients. But also, sometimes when we fast, and if we're not doing it in a balanced way, we get stomach aches, right? Or we get really tired because we're not eating enough, or we're not getting enough prolonged energy or food that really, sticks with us and gives us the energy we need. And if we're so uncomfortable because we're feeling bloated or uncomfortable, or we're feeling sluggish and tired, well, that also defeats the purpose of what we're trying to do during the fast. We're not able to actually do the work we need to do, to help other people or to be in church, or we're not focused in prayer because we're distracted at how physically uncomfortable we are. So just by nature of paying attention to that nutritional balance, that can really help us feel good enough to be able to do our work. We can't be fasting so hard that we're useless to anybody else around us. So that's where the balance comes in. So as a reminder, those four balanced, the four food groups, four fasting food groups: plant proteins, fruits and veggies, grains, and fats. So now I'd like us all to look back at our meals that we wrote down. And does anybody have a meal that hits all of those four food groups that they would like to share with everybody today? Maybe go back one side so we can see the, yeah. A burrito. Yes, okay, so beef burrito. So we have our beans, our proteins, right? And then it's in a wrap. And then do we have any fruits or veggies? Yeah. Yeah, but a packet full. And then what are our sources of fat in there?
You can make some guacamole.
Yeah, guacamole, so there you go, right? And that's pretty quick too, right? You can use fresh ingredients, but you could also do canned, or you can buy pre-made stuff, whatever. But yeah, that's a great example. Or any version of that. Taco bowls, taco salad, rice bowls, right? There's lots of versions of that. What else? What other ideas? Yes. Tofu scramble. All right, so we have our tofu, which is what? Protein. Yeah, it's our plant protein. And then what else do you put in your tofu scramble?
All kinds of veggies in there.
All kinds of veggies, yep. Yeah, you could put beans for some added protein. Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
And the vegetables too.
That's true. Yeah. Yeah, so thank you for bringing it up. So as I mentioned, these are some of our richest sources of protein here from plants, but we're also getting protein from grains, especially if they're whole. They have some protein. Some vegetables have protein. Fruits and have very little, but some of our sources of fat too. So just by nature of getting all of our food groups, we get our protein needs met. That's one of the top questions I get. Well, how am I going to get my protein in if I'm not eating meat? But variety is going to help us meet those needs. What else? Yes?
Roasted veggies with orzo and walnuts.
Ooh, roasted veggies with orzo and walnuts. I like that. And so that walnut, I'm going to say, counts as our plant protein and our fat. And again, we get a little grain protein from our orzo as well. Let's take one more. Yes.
Shrimp jambalaya.
Ooh, yeah. Nice. So we got our fish without a backbone, our shrimp, and then do you use rice in your jambalaya?
Yes.
And then lots and lots of veggies. And dietary fats. Usually we don't have to think about this if we use oil at all. A little goes a long way when it comes to our fat. So now I'd like to see, is anybody missing, like have a go-to fasting recipe that they love, but it's missing a food group or two that we want to see how we can help it? Yeah.
Yeah, like just sort of a simple like seasoned lentils and rice.
Yeah.
It's a staple that I've had for a while.
Okay.
It's missing a bit of like the fats and the fruits and veggies.
So what could we do there? Could we add something to it or have something along with it? What did you say? Ooh, some cranberries. Okay. So add a little, a different kind of flavor there and a different texture. How else could we add fruits and vegetables to our lentils and rice meal?
Salad.
Yeah, side salad, put a little dressing on there, or maybe some nuts on your salad, right? Or some olives. Oh, I didn't put that on there. Huh. I'm a bad Greek. I forgot to put the olives. What else? What's another meal that we need to brainstorm here?
PB&J.
PB&J. Okay. Yes. The ultimate go-to. So we have our grains, right? Our peanut butter would be what?
Both protein and fat.
Yeah, I'd say that's protein and fat. So how are we going to add a fruit and veggie? Because jelly, I wouldn't really, that's a stretch. I wouldn't count that. So how can we add a fruit or veggie?
Banana.
Yeah. Ooh. Yeah, so have a piece of fresh fruit on the side, add some bananas to your sandwich, have some, think like packing packing your lunch for school. Put some cucumbers in there, or raw carrots. It doesn't have to be, it doesn't have to be fancy. Oatmeal. Oatmeal for breakfast. Okay, so how are we going to get our blueberries, bananas, maybe some walnuts? There you go. All right, so then we just got a nice balanced meal for breakfast there too. Nice. Okay, does anyone else have a meal or a question that they're dying? They're like, I love this meal, but it just takes so long. How do I make it more quicker?
Yeah. I have a question. I struggle to cook tofu quick.
Ah.
Like, you make it takes a while. You gotta press it too, and you can fry it, but that's not always depending on how you're fasting. You may not fry it in oil.
Sure. So how do we use tofu in kind of a quick way? Well, I'll ask you all. Has anyone used tofu in a dish that doesn't require pressing it, or you have some sort of secret to make it go faster? Okay. Yeah, so a lot of recipes usually call for, wrapping the tofu and pressing it with something heavy over a long period of time, but you could always just kind of use your hands, get some of the water out. If you do any sort of scrambled tofu dish, and you're doing it on a stovetop, a lot of that water is going to evaporate. So that's another way to mix it in, like a tofu scramble. One of my favorites, me and Deacon Greg love our tofu tacos. Same kind of thing. It's like a tofu scramble, but we're putting some black beans and salsa in there. And always mixing it into any sort of, as a replacement for meat. Throwing it in with your lentils, for example, would be a way to boost the protein there as well. Yes?
I have an interesting way to use tofu. If you blend it with peanut butter and banana, it lightens the peanut butter and makes almost like a fluff, and it is different. Different, you're not just having peanut butter and jelly. It adds a little bit of lightness. My kids eat it with a spoon. When I make it,
I see some faces, and that's okay. But tofu really does take on the flavor of whatever you're mixing it with. So it really does have a lot of uses that way.
Yes, it's tofu blended with peanut butter and bananas and a little bit of lemon, and it makes the peanut butter really fluffy and light. And all of the people in my house would just eat it plain. I make it and then it's gone.
What kind of tofu?
Extra
In a
firm.
blender?
Extra firm.
Yeah, very, very, until it's smooth, and it's very creamy and light and fluffy.
Do you press the water out of or do you just leave?
I just get no.
Well, probably add
I'm
something.
pretty lazy.
There you go. How about what did we all eat tonight? This lovely spread that the ladies of the parish provided tonight. Did we have all 4 food groups tonight? There you go. Yeah, okay. And then I believe there were some recipes here as well, so make sure to pick up some of those. Thank you everybody for providing those as well. So we talked about the balance nutritionally speaking and how that's really important for our bodies. So if you could go 2 slides now. I also want to make sure to talk about the elements of a nourishing fast spiritually. So has anyone heard of the 3-legged stool analogy for fasting? We have 3 elements of fasting. There's the food aspect, prayer, and almsgiving. All 3 go together. For the sake of symmetry, I've broken out prayer into corporate prayer, which is prayer in community. So we're called to go to church more frequently during the fast, as well as increase or strengthen our personal prayer. Recommitment to our personal prayer life or increasing that in some way. And then lastly, we have the almsgiving piece, right? So we're focusing less on ourselves, but where do we put that focus? We put it on God foremost, and then our neighbor after that. So fasting is truly, how we talked about in the beginning, it is truly incomplete and could be misdirected if we are not also nourishing our soul with our prayer and almsgiving as well. And I want to leave you with this final quote here. This is from Archimandrite Sergius's book, Acquiring the Mind of Christ, on a sermon on the Dormition. He says, this feast of the Dormition of the Mother of God is immensely joyful and life-giving for those who with childlike faith and without argument seek to enter into its festivities. For those who have prepared themselves with fasting and prayer and by being present at church, the tomb of the Mother of God is joy, is life. So I hope that you all have been able to take something away from tonight's presentation. These are some of my favorite fasting books. I meant to bring them with me tonight and forgot, but then I found out you have all these books in your library in the corner here. So some of my favorites are Fasting as a Family, which is a cookbook for families by Melissa Nasco, A Toolkit for Spiritual Growth, Food, Faith, and Fasting by Rita Madden, and When You Fast by Joseph Latendre. They're all available through Ancient Faith, and as I said, available in the corner of this room here. So those are great resources if you want to read more about fasting and nutritional fasting. And then I also I have homework for you. Thank you, I have homework. So at the bottom of your handout, there are 3 blank lines. Either tonight or maybe tonight as you go home, reflect on what we talked about tonight and set some intentions for the next 14 days and how you would like to observe this fast through fasting, prayer, and almsgiving so that we can follow the example of Christ's mother. So that's your homework. So I just want to thank you all for being here with me tonight, for sitting so attentively, listening, participating. Thank you again to Father John and St. John's Parish for having me. If you'd like to connect with me, there's a couple ways to do that. You can find Krista Fedorchak Nutrition on Facebook. You can find me on Instagram, which I know a lot of you already have. You came up and told me, which is really cool. At The Orthodox Dietitian, you can email me. And I also have a podcast on Ancient Faith Radio, Food Freedom Through Christ. So I would just love to hear from any of you, either tonight when we open up for questions, or after I leave here, we can connect that way as well. So thank you very much.
When I compare the dietary recommendations for protein and try to meet those with a plant-based diet, there's just no way to come up with those RDAs for protein on a plant-based diet. Can you just not try to meet those when you're fasting?
Yeah, so I will say everybody's protein needs are different, and depending on where you're getting what the protein recommendations are, I guess that could vary. But whenever we eat foods from all our different food groups, that's going to help supplement our protein. Like, so say for example, a potato. Okay, yeah, that's not very protein rich, is it? But it has 4 grams of protein. And say we include that in our chili that has lentils and beans in it, and a half cup of beans is going to give us another 7 grams of protein. It's going to vary a little bit by beans, right? And then we have, some whole grain rice, some brown rice, which is going to add another bit of protein too. So suddenly you have a meal that's 15, maybe 20 grams of protein, and that's about all your body can really absorb anyway at one time. So it does take a little bit more planning. It's not as easy as if unless you were going to have meat, because our meat and our dairy is very rich in protein. But by nature of getting a variety of food groups, most people can meet their protein needs just fine.
You're right, Krista. Variety is the key there. Variety of the plant, even all kinds. There's too much of an overemphasis on protein. People are constantly hearing protein. There's too much of it.
Yeah, so you're bringing up a good point. Protein is very trendy in our nutrition world now. Protein is inserted into pancake mixes and fortified things.
Nutrition should be a person diet.
Yeah.
You get protein in plants also.
Yes, yeah. They're definitely not as rich of a source as animals, but they're there. But if you are somebody who does have a particularly high protein requirement, maybe you're recovering from an illness, or there are certain populations that have higher protein needs, well then maybe you're a person who needs to include a little bit of dairy during their fast. Or you are careful to incorporate those fish without a backbone. Your fast might look different, right? So that's why we don't make it all about following the rules to a T, but about how can we use fasting to open up our hearts and be with God. Yes.
Yeah. Do you have any wisdom surrounding like discovering whether or not you have food sensitivities and sort of working through like maybe there are certain plants and fasting foods that maybe are staples for a lot of people, but they don't really sit well with you, and kind of sorting out what you respond well to and what you don't.
Yeah, so that's a really good question too, and I would definitely say that's something to discuss with if you have a gastroenterologist or a dietitian. They can really help you pinpoint what's going on. But a lot of the times too, different things how we eat can really help. So chewing really well, eating slowly and chewing well. Digestion starts in the mouth. So if we can do more digestion here in the mouth and chew well, eat slowly, that's going to help. If we can actually do a lot of what we talked about with inviting Christ to the table and slowing down our meals and creating a more relaxing and enjoyable environment, that's also going to help our digestion. If we're stressed, like if you're stressed and you have a stomach ache, or when you're a little kid and you're nervous and and you can't, and your tummy starts to hurt, that's because we have two systems in our body. We have fight or flight or freeze, or in our stress response, and we have rest and digest. Yes, and they can't be turned on at the same time. It's either one or the other. So if we're eating, in a scenario where, we're eating really fast, we're not chewing well, we're kind of rushing to go to the next thing, we're sort of stressed, that's not going to do well for our digestion. So while there might be really particular foods that certain people are sensitive to, starting with those things can certainly help. Chewing well, eating slowly, trying to eat in a relaxed environment, and staying hydrated as well. Because we get a lot of more fiber when we eat plant-based, and when we get more fiber, we need some more fluids to help our digestion with that. So, yeah.
What about the artificial protein substitutes like tofurkey and boca and the various Morningside and other products? What's your opinion about those?
Yeah, that's a good question as well. So he's asking about kind of those meat substitutes that are out on the market now that are really rich in protein. Sometimes they taste very much like the real thing. So in some degree, like if you go to Burger King and get an Impossible Whopper, if we go back to our quote from the beginning, the letter of the law versus the spirit of the law, having that like fake hamburger that really tastes like a hamburger might not be so much in line with the spirit of the law. But for somebody who is just starting out fasting, or they're a little new to it, that might be a good bridge. That might be a good stepping stone and a way for that person to start to observe the fast while getting some, good protein, and it's not too stark of a difference. So another good thing to talk about with your spiritual father.
I find it's also easier for kids.
Yeah.
A lot of that stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Yes.
You can do a black bean burger too. Black bean burger has all the protein you need.
Yeah, definitely lots of veggie burger, protein burgers.
Eventually, your stomach, your gut will change. If you eat foods won't bother you. You just have to introduce them slowly, a little bit at a time.
Yeah, so he's saying introduce them slowly, which can be, hard when we're fasting and have a fast-free week leading up to Lent, and then all of a sudden, boom, it's the strictest week of the year, the second of the strict, right? So, so that can be hard, but that's also kind of part of the game a little bit, right? We're supposed to be a little uncomfortable, a little hungry, and it's finding that balance.
about the supplements? You know, we go into the GNC stores and all those things. Can you touch on that for a moment?
Sure. So supplements are definitely something that is highly individualized. You know, it's going to depend on your dietary pattern, your genetics, your whenever blood work comes back, if there's any sickness or anything else going on that might increase or decrease your needs for any particular vitamin or mineral. However, I would say, you know, a standard multivitamin, not a bad idea for most people, but definitely talk to your doctor about that. Whenever we're fasting, it's a nice idea to help fill in any nutritional gaps. It's not a replacement for a healthy diet, but it can help fill in some of those gaps. But it's certainly not necessary. Most people, without any special circumstances, can meet all of their dietary nutrient requirements through food. And that's always what we say, food first, right?
You know, we're being flooded with the little bottles, the fruits and vegetables, you know, once a day or twice a day, you know.
Like a little supplements, fruits and veggies.
So.
Well, that's no fun. Fruits and veggies are so delicious. Why would you want to pack them into a little capsule? Yeah. So supplements can help fill in the gaps for sure, but food first. If you don't get the fiber from the fruit vegetable capsules, right, or you don't get the taste or the flavor, you don't get the opportunity to sit down and enjoy a meal with your family. So, yeah, that's it. They're fine, but food first. Yeah, it's cheaper to not do the supplements as well. And then we can take that money we save. Almsgiving. Yeah, there you go. Yeah, that's part of it, right? Eating simpler meals, not spending so much on our meat and dairy products, saving that money and using it for something else, donating it to the church, using it to buy a meal for somebody else, right? This all relates. Yeah. Any other questions? These are such good questions. Thank you.
Great. Well, thank you so much. And we hope to maybe at some point see you back again. But of course, once parish ministry starts, you'll be a little more tied down.
I think so.
But it's such a pleasure to have you. And of course, with family in the area, maybe we could work something out again. I hope everyone found this wonderful presentation to be illuminating and maybe helped stir some thoughts. It really helped me a little bit. I was telling Mom just beforehand, you know, I tend to lose a lot of weight over the fast because I just don't like Lenten food. If we haven't eaten dairy, what's the point of eating? So I just don't eat very much at all, which then makes me hangry and other things, and that's not helpful. So, you know, these are good things to think about. If we have any final questions, or I think we are done. Well, I want to thank you so much from the bottom of my heart and the heart of my parish. Thank you to our wonderful ladies who helped put together our food here. Thank you for Father Michael Calor, who's here with his wonderful presbytera. And it seems like they helped to get the word out amongst the Holy Cross people, of course, which is where Montes Krista, Diaconess of Krista, grew up. And I want to let everyone know that if you're interested, we try to do this every month or so. It doesn't often work out that well. But we have next month on September 12th, same time, same place, 6 o'clock Vespers with a talk after a little brief meal. Mother Christophora is coming down from the Holy Transfiguration Monastery to tell us about Mother Alexandra, the founder, right, Princess Ileana, who was a Romanian princess who, having been, exiled from her homeland, dedicated herself to the heavenly homeland, and ended up establishing a wonderful monastery here in Western Pennsylvania, which, by the way, is their parish feast day, the monastery feast day, the monastery pilgrimage this Saturday and Sunday. So I encourage everyone to go on Saturday and Sunday to the Feast of the Transfiguration at the monastery. You're welcome to come here, of course, September 12th. Again, please thank everyone as you're leaving. Please thank Montes Krista and Deacon Gregory, wherever he may be. And God bless and keep us all. We'll stand and we'll pray. It is truly means. Oh, sorry, Deacon Micah, I think, had a question.
Well, I was just going to give a testimonial. I am Krista's biggest fan, and Deacon Gregory. I go to seminary with him. I got to use her program last year for about a year. I remember last summer I lost 15 pounds with some of the things. It's not a guarantee. But I'm just all I'm saying is the stuff that she does works, and she's coming from an Orthodox Christian perspective, really. And so some of her personal stuff is very affordable, I would say. And so she does some apple through people, works with their diet where they're at, so you can track some of the stuff you're going through. So, you know, they may not brag on themselves, but I will. So please seriously consider it. That's just my 2 cents.
Remember, not just for spiritual things, but she does have a business which you can help to support. And one of the ways we help support each other in the church is we support each other's businesses, right? So often we don't think about this. That's actually an important aspect of community. Is if someone opens up a business, we can help support them and the church and our church community, one another, by going to them rather than an alternative, right? It's helping support one another. So if you have dietary needs, she has a private practice. So consider reaching out on the various platforms. And give any, business. There you go. So we'll stand and we'll pray. But thank you so much for coming. It is truly meet to bless thee, O Fedorchak, ever blessed and most pure, the Mother of our God, more honorable than the cherubim and more glorious beyond compare than the seraphim. Without corruption thou gavest birth to God the Word. True Theotokos, we magnify thee. God bless and keep you all. Thank you so much for being here. And again, I'm sure Krista will be willing to entertain some individual questions that we're
And Father, we do take credit cards at the bookstore.
Oh, that's right. If you want to buy some of the books that have been
Take credit
advertised.
cards.
Yeah.
Thank you.